Jake Morrison, a 28-year-old experienced solo hiker from Richmond, Virginia, was documenting his through hike across the Virginia-West Virginia border on August 24, 2025. What Jake found next would transform his casual hiking documentation into evidence that continues to baffle experts. Crossing the trail were massive footprints, over 14 inches long with clear toe impressions pressed deep into the soft earth. Initially dismissing them as misidentified bear tracks, Jake's curiosity got the better of him. The recording captured his quiet disbelief as he realized the tracks didn't resemble a bear's gait or stride. Following the prints approximately 50 yards off-trail into dense forest, Jake made a discovery that sent chills down his spine. Hidden among the trees was a crude shelter constructed from branches and moss, clearly not made by human hands, yet showing an intelligence that no known animal possesses. On the footage, his breathing turned uneven as he muttered to himself, struggling to process what he was seeing. But it was what he found nearby that truly alarmed him. Scattered camping gear from what appeared to be a previous hiker lay torn and abandoned. A backpack, ripped open as if by massive claws, its contents strewn across the forest floor. The footage caught his trembling voice and the moment of realization that something violent had occurred there. His tone cracked with fear as he tried to describe what he was seeing into the microphone. As Jake documented the scene with his phone, it became clear he wasn't alone. Branches snapped in the distance. Movement flickered in his peripheral vision. The footage showed him slowly turning, aware that something was watching him from the shadows above the forest floor. What happened next appeared only in fragments on Jake's phone. A low, resonant call echoed through the trees, eerily similar to audio captured in other alleged encounters, but unlike any known animal. The footage recorded his hushed reaction, his voice trembling as he realized this was not a bear. Jake attempted to retreat toward the main trail, but quickly became disoriented. His voice on the footage wavered in panic as he mentioned that his GPS had stopped working. The signal loss, a phenomenon often reported in Bigfoot encounter cases, made navigation impossible. As daylight faded and temperatures dropped, the video captured his growing awareness that he was in serious danger. A massive dark shape began to move between the trees, staying just out of clear sight. The phone's camera captured brief, shaky glimpses of something extraordinary. A bipedal figure standing over 8 feet tall, covered in dark hair, moving with purpose and intelligence. Jake's breathing turned erratic as he gasped at its size and proximity, whispering frantically into the microphone. Jake later told investigators that the creature had not been merely roaming the area, but appeared to be actively hunting him. It treated him as prey, its movements deliberate and coordinated. According to his testimony, its behavior reflected more than instinct, something close to anger, as if it resented his presence. The creature's actions revealed a kind of intelligence that unnerved him. It appeared to cut off potential escape routes, driving him deeper into the forest. As darkness fell, the footage captured Jake's ragged breathing and broken speech as he realized he was being cornered by something far more dangerous than any known predator. At approximately 7:30 p.m., the creature emerged from the tree line in what could only be described as a full territorial display. Jake's phone recorded fragments of the chaos that followed, a massive, aggressive figure thrashing through the brush, breaking branches, and closing in. The audio picked up Jake's panicked cries and curses as wood shattered near him. The attack escalated within seconds. Rocks the size of softballs came hurling through the air with startling precision. Jake could be heard shouting in pain and disbelief as debris struck nearby trees and the ground around him. He sustained deep scratches across his back and arms from flying fragments thrown with enormous force. Investigators later noted that Jake's account described the creature using projectiles with deliberate intent. It had not simply thrown debris in panic. It appeared to select specific rocks, aim, and adjust, showing awareness of its effect. On the footage, Jake's voice dropped to low, incoherent muttering between gasps of pain and fear. The creature's vocalizations shifted from the initial territorial calls to explosive roars and high-pitched screams, sounds that Jake would later describe as pure rage. What followed was a desperate chase through the dense forest as night fell. The footage showed jerking flashlight beams, frantic motion, and Jake's hoarse attempts to stay quiet while fleeing. The pursuit ended with a loud crash and the sound of rushing water as he fell into a creek bed, injuring his ankle, but temporarily escaping his pursuer. According to his later statement, he heard it moving above him through most of the night. Slow, deliberate pacing, interrupted by deep, guttural calls. At times, faint replies could be heard farther off, leading him to suspect that more than one creature was present. The camera's final clip caught his whisper, shaken and terrified, as he acknowledged the possibility that there were two. As dawn broke on August 25th, the creature's behavior changed. The aggressive displays ceased. The phone recorded one last image of the figure pulling back into the trees as the sound of a rescue helicopter grew louder overhead. Responding to his emergency beacon, the team located Jake severely injured, but alive. Massive footprints surrounded the scene, along with signs of systematic destruction in the immediate area. His wounds were consistent with impacts shown in the footage. Medical professionals later noted that the depth and force of his injuries suggested precision and strength beyond human capability. Jake spent 3 days hospitalized as specialists examined his injuries and the footage. The 47-minute recording surfaced online within hours of his rescue, sparking widespread debate. Dr. Marcus Webb, a digital forensics expert, spent weeks analyzing metadata and compression artifacts before concluding that the footage displayed no signs of manipulation. Whatever Jake captured, it had been filmed in real time. Skeptics, however, offered counter-arguments. A wildlife biologist proposed that the figure was likely a large black bear displaying unusual bipedal behavior, perhaps caused by injury or neurological impairment. Others questioned Jake's credibility, citing posts suggesting he had been struggling financially before the incident and might have sought attention or revenue. As investigations continued and opinions among experts remained divided, Jake Morrison found himself unwillingly at the center of the Bigfoot debate. Once an ordinary hiker, he had become the man who claimed to have survived a Sasquatch attack, an identity he never wanted and one that visibly unsettled him. After Jake fled a relentless, violent predator, the next encounter would reveal a different side of the same elusive giant, measured, probing, and disturbingly deliberate. Maya Collins, a 24-year-old wilderness lifestyle vlogger, was filming the latest episode of her 48 Hours Alone in the Wilderness series in the remote Cascade Range of Washington State when her cameras captured something extraordinary. On September 15, 2019, Maya began her typical upbeat educational content about wilderness survival and nature appreciation. Her footage would later be analyzed frame by frame by researchers worldwide, revealing details that Maya herself wouldn't notice until much later. Maya's initial footage follows the familiar pattern of wilderness vlogging content. She methodically documents her campsite selection process, explaining to her audience the importance of water access, wind protection, and level ground. Her tripod camera captures her setting up shelter while she provides running commentary about wilderness safety. Maya told her camera that the spot was absolutely perfect while arranging her gear. She pointed out that there was fresh water from the creek about 50 yards down, natural windbreak from the massive Douglas firs, and an incredible view. What Maya couldn't have known was that her educational content about water purification, fire building, and shelter construction was being observed. Later analysis of her footage would reveal subtle movements in the background, shadows that didn't match the wind patterns, shapes that appeared and disappeared at the edge of the frame. During her evening routine, Maya set up her tripod camera to capture her dinner preparation and star photography setup. She casually mentioned feeling watched, but attributed it to normal forest sounds. She told the camera that every little sound made her think something was watching her, but that it was just part of the wilderness experience. The tripod camera, left running during her dinner, captured something Maya was completely unaware of at the time. In the background, barely visible in the growing dusk, a massive shape moves between the trees. The movement is deliberate, careful, suggesting intelligence and curiosity rather than random animal behavior. Maya remained focused on engaging with her future audience, discussing the peaceful isolation of her chosen location. She explained that this was why she loved remote spots. No trail traffic, no noise pollution, just her and nature in its purest form. Morning footage from September 16th reveals disturbances around Maya's campsite that she initially failed to notice. Her backpack had been moved slightly from its original position. Her food cache, properly secured in a bear canister, showed signs of careful examination, not the destructive investigation typical of bears or other known wildlife. Maya attributed these small changes to wind or her own forgetfulness. She mentioned to her handheld camera that she could have sworn she left her pack somewhere else, but that she was probably just tired the night before, and that memory played tricks on you out there. During her nature walk documentation, Maya's camera occasionally caught shadows and movement at the edge of the frame. She was focused on discussing local flora and wildlife, pointing out Douglas fir characteristics and explaining leave-no-trace principles to her audience. The audio track, however, picked up distant calls that Maya didn't consciously register. Low, resonant sounds that later analysis would determine didn't match any cataloged Pacific Northwest wildlife. The most significant discovery came when Maya found large footprints crossing a muddy section of trail. Her initial reaction was dismissive. She told her camera that it looked like someone with really big hiking boots had come through, probably a size 14 or 15, and that it was a big hiker. Later measurement would reveal the prints were over 16 inches long with clear toe impressions and a stride length impossible for human locomotion. But at the time, Maya was focused on her content creation, not cryptozoological investigation. By the second day of her wilderness adventure, Maya began noticing that something felt fundamentally wrong with her environment. Her wilderness experience and survival training started triggering subconscious alarms that she couldn't initially identify. She mentioned to her camera during her morning routine that the forest seemed unusually quiet and that she hadn't heard any bird calls since waking up. She added that it was actually kind of weird for that time of year. During her exploration hike, Maya discovered broken branches in patterns that her trained eye recognized as deliberate rather than natural. Large limbs had been snapped at heights that suggested something much taller than a human had passed through the area. The breaks were fresh, occurring sometime during the night while she slept. Maya's wilderness knowledge began connecting dots that her conscious mind wasn't ready to accept. She explained to her camera while examining the evidence that the branch breaks didn't match any known animal behavior, that bears didn't typically break branches that high up, and that the pattern was too systematic for wind damage. Concerned about potential wildlife activity around her campsite, Maya made a decision that would change everything. She set up a motion-activated camera at her campsite perimeter, telling her audience that she just wanted to see what visited at night, and that it could be elk or bears, and that it was better to know what they were sharing the forest with. That evening's footage would capture something that defied explanation. While Maya slept peacefully in her tent, a massive silhouette moved past her camp. The shape was clearly bipedal. Most remarkably, it appeared to be observing Maya's campsite without disturbing anything, behavior further strengthening the curiosity rather than predatory intent theory. Maya's discovery of the night footage the following morning marked the turning point of her wilderness adventure. Initially excited about capturing what she assumed was a bear or elk, Maya began reviewing the motion camera footage on her camera's playback screen. She commented with excitement to her handheld camera that they definitely had a visitor the previous night and that it was going to be great content, adding that she was about to see what they caught. The gradual recognition of what she was actually seeing played out in real time on her recording. Her excitement slowly transformed into confusion, then disbelief, then genuine fear as she enhanced the footage and examined it more closely. She whispered to her camera that it wasn't a bear, that the proportions were all wrong, and that it was walking completely upright. The reality of her situation hit Maya like a physical blow. She was alone in the wilderness with an unknown creature of massive proportions. Her survival instincts kicked in immediately, overriding her content creation priorities. She told her camera that she needed to get out of there right away, that she didn't know what it was, but she wasn't staying to find out. Maya's handheld camera captured her panic and excitement as she broke camp in record time. Despite approaching darkness and the inherent dangers of night hiking, she made the decision to hike out immediately. Her footage shows her hands shaking as she secured her gear, her breathing rapid and shallow as adrenaline flooded her system. The hike to the trailhead parking lot took 3 hours in darkness, with Maya's headlamp providing the only illumination. Her camera captured her calling park rangers from her vehicle, her voice still trembling with the magnitude of what she had experienced. Maya's footage went viral within hours of posting, but unlike many viral cryptid videos, hers underwent immediate scientific scrutiny that validated rather than debunked her claims. The multiple camera angles, high-definition quality, and Maya's genuine reactions provided researchers with unprecedented documentation of a Bigfoot encounter. Dr. Patricia Williams, a digital forensics expert from the University of Washington, conducted extensive analysis of Maya's footage. Her findings were remarkable. The video shows no signs of digital manipulation. The metadata is consistent with the claimed recording dates and locations. Most importantly, the creature's movement patterns and proportions are consistent across multiple camera angles, something extremely difficult to fake. Primatologist Dr. James Rodriguez analyzed the creature's locomotion patterns captured in Maya's motion camera footage. The gait analysis reveals bipedal movement with characteristics unlike any known primate species. The stride length suggests a creature standing between 8 and 9 feet tall, with arm proportions that don't match human anatomy. Maya's transformation from wilderness vlogger to reluctant cryptozoology celebrity happened overnight. However, Maya has used her platform responsibly, advocating for Bigfoot habitat protection and supporting scientific research into cryptid phenomena. Maya later reflected in a follow-up video that she had never intended to become known for the Bigfoot incident. Her original goal was simply to share her love of the wilderness. Over time, she expressed that if her experience brought more awareness to the need to protect these creatures and their habitat, then the ordeal had at least served a purpose. But not everyone is lucky enough to survive to tell a tale. The next solo traveler would step into the remote Cascades, unaware that the forest could prey not just on bodies, but on a fragile mind already fraying. In October 2017, the Spokane County Sheriff's Office received what appeared to be a routine missing person report. Robert Bobby Kellerman, a 43-year-old construction worker, had failed to make his court-mandated phone call to his children. His ex-wife Jennifer was concerned, but not panicked. Bobby had been struggling since their divorce and often disappeared for days at a time. A grainy black and white footage shows a figure emerging from an apartment building at 3:47 a.m. Bobby, 43, adjusts a large backpack and walks into the darkness. This would be the last clear image of him alive. Bobby was a man coming apart at the seams. A construction worker from Spokane, Washington, he'd lost everything that mattered to him in the span of 6 months. His marriage to Jennifer had crumbled under the weight of his depression and drinking. The custody battle that followed took his children away. By October, Bobby was unemployed, alone, and spiraling into a darkness that his family would later describe as complete despair. What happened next would transform a routine missing person case into something far more disturbing. Detective Sarah Martinez of the Spokane County Sheriff's Office has spent 15 years investigating missing persons cases. When investigators reconstructed Bobby's final days, a distinct pattern began to form. It wasn't random. There was a visible progression, a deterioration that could be followed through surveillance footage and multiple eyewitness accounts. Day 1 began at the apartment building. Footage from neighbor Dorothy Lilly's doorbell camera showed Bobby leaving with camping gear, moving with an intensity that didn't suggest leisure. His posture and pacing indicated purpose, someone on a mission rather than a man setting out for a simple trip. Day 2 revealed the first signs of unraveling. Gas station surveillance from a Chevron outside Spokane recorded Bobby buying camping supplies, canned food, and an unusually large number of batteries. The clerk later described him as restless and distracted, muttering under his breath. The footage shows Bobby counting out cash. His movements seemed erratic, paranoid. This is a man already on edge, though from what, no one yet understood. Day 3 marked Bobby's final financial transaction. A TM camera footage captures him withdrawing $340 from his checking account, nearly everything he had left. The timestamp reads 2:14 p.m. Bank records show this cleaned out his account, leaving him with less than $12. Day 4 provided the last confirmed sighting of Bobby's vehicle. A traffic camera on Highway 20 captured a glimpse of his blue Ford pickup heading toward the Colville National Forest Access Road. The timestamp, 6:23 a.m. After this, Bobby Kellerman vanished into 1.1 million acres of wilderness. For the next 4 days, Bobby existed in a void. His family, accustomed to his periods of isolation following the divorce, assumed he was cooling off after a particularly brutal custody hearing. His ex-wife, Jennifer, would later describe this as their biggest mistake. Jennifer Kellerman initially assumed he just needed time away. After the court hearing, his anger and frustration had been obvious, and it seemed natural that he might retreat into the woods to calm down, as he had on other occasions. She believed he would return once he had cooled off, never considering that this time would be different. Day 9 shattered that assumption. Bobby's truck was discovered abandoned at the Colville National Forest trailhead, keys still in the ignition. The vehicle was unlocked, his wallet on the dashboard. Park rangers who found it described the scene as like he just got out and walked away. Day 10 brought panic. Bobby had promised to call his children every Tuesday at 7 p.m., a court-mandated arrangement he'd never missed despite his struggles. When the phone didn't ring, Jennifer knew something was catastrophically wrong. Detective Martinez assembled her team on day 11. The case initially appeared straightforward. A depressed, recently divorced man had likely taken his own life in the wilderness. But as they began reconstructing Bobby's movements, a more complex picture emerged. Martinez noted that missing person cases in wilderness regions typically fell into clear categories: suicide, accidental death, or voluntary disappearance. Yet Bobby's situation contained elements that fit none of them. The key breakthrough came from an isolated property owner named Harold Winters, a 78-year-old who lived 12 miles from where Bobby's abandoned truck was discovered. His cabin stood along a rugged Forest Service road that few vehicles could reach. On the 6th day of the search, footage from Winters' doorbell camera revealed something unexpected. The video showed Bobby approaching the cabin door, disheveled and filthy, his clothing torn. When Winters answered, Bobby's voice, faintly picked up on the camera's microphone, carried a single urgent plea for food. According to Winters' later statement, Bobby seemed agitated. Though offered shelter, he refused to enter, insisting that he couldn't remain in one place for long. He accepted a few cans of food and water, then vanished back into the forest. Investigators interpreted this as critical insight into Bobby's deteriorating state of mind during his final days. He seemed paranoid and sleep-deprived. Search operations immediately expanded around the area near Winters' cabin. The conditions were harsh: dense pine forest, deep ravines, and vast stretches where a man could vanish without trace. But it was the strongest lead available. 2 days later, a motion-activated trail camera maintained by the Forest Service captured new evidence. At 11:23 p.m. on the 7th day, Bobby appeared on film, moving through the frame with the frantic body language of someone being pursued. He paused often, turning sharply as though listening or watching for something just beyond view. Then he moved out of frame, his outline swallowed by the dark. The footage convinced investigators that the case had shifted far beyond the realm of a simple disappearance. On day 12, search teams made the discovery that would transform the investigation from missing person to potential homicide. Deep in the forest, 3.2 miles from Bobby's abandoned truck, they found his campsite. The scene was immediately secured as potential evidence. Bobby's tent remained standing, but everything else told a story of chaos and abandonment. His sleeping bag lay partially outside the tent, personal items scattered across the forest floor. Empty food cans and water bottles indicated he'd been there for several days. Crime scene technician David Park cataloged the site with clinical precision. His assessment indicated Bobby had lived there for several days, likely 4 or 5, judging by the multiple fire rings, food scraps, and a shallow trench he had dug for waste. The layout suggested long-term isolation rather than a temporary camp. Inside the tent, investigators found the clearest evidence of his decline, a worn composition notebook filled with increasingly erratic entries. The early pages held ordinary frustrations, cold nights, dwindling supplies, bitter reflections on his divorce, and court battles. As the days passed, the writing fractured. Sentences shortened, looping into disjointed thoughts and warnings. Day 8. Something big moving around last night, probably a bear, sounded heavier. Day 9. It's back, circling again. Smells wrong. Wet fur and rot. Bears don't smell like that. Day 10. It's closer. Heard it breathing. Too big, not an animal. Among his belongings were full bottles of antidepressants and anxiety medication, untouched. Empty liquor bottles instead hinted at how he'd been coping, his fear amplified by withdrawal and intoxication. His cell phone, dead when recovered, held the final record of his night. Dozens of blurry, hurried shots of the forest surrounded his camp. Most showed only darkness and trees, but the timestamps told a pattern, taken hours apart through the night, evidence of a man convinced something was watching him. 40 yards from Bobby's campsite, search teams discovered what would become the most crucial evidence in the case. The forest floor showed clear signs of a violent struggle, unlike anything the experienced investigators had seen before. Detective Martinez described the scene as unlike anything in his career. The disturbed area spanned roughly 20 square yards. Trees bore bark stripped off up to 10 feet high, and thick branches lay splintered across the ground. The soil itself was deeply churned, as if something immense had thrashed through the clearing. The physical evidence told a violent story. Strips of Bobby's flannel shirt hung from branches, shredded rather than torn by cutting tools. His backpack, the same one seen in the apartment security footage 12 days earlier, had been ripped apart and scattered across the site. Crime scene photographs showed destruction far beyond what could be caused by human hands or known wildlife. Blood traces on fabric and nearby stones confirmed his presence. DNA tests matched Bobby. The distribution of stains indicated sudden impact and high force, consistent with a catastrophic struggle. What changed the tone of the investigation were the impressions found in the soft earth nearby. Several massive footprints, each over 16 inches long, showed the clear outline of toes, arches, and heels. The spacing between them indicated a stride consistent with a bipedal figure standing 8 to 9 feet tall. As news of the unusual evidence spread, Detective Martinez found herself dealing with a case that had grown far beyond a typical missing person investigation. The FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit was called in to provide expertise on the psychological aspects of the case. Special Agent Rebecca Torres reviewed the full timeline of Bobby Kellerman's final days. Her analysis concluded that while his journal reflected severe psychological distress, the physical evidence suggested his fears may have had a tangible cause. The footprint casts were sent to Dr. Patricia Hendricks, a primatologist at Washington State University, who had previously consulted on rare wildlife incidents. Her findings were both methodical and unsettling. The prints showed features consistent with those often attributed to the so-called Bigfoot phenomenon, yet their depth, spacing, and placement indicated forceful, rapid movement, more consistent with an attack than casual observation. Search operations started shortly. Helicopters equipped with thermal imaging swept across the surrounding forest. Cadaver dogs were deployed, joined by over 50 volunteers and professional rescue personnel. Despite the scale of the search, no body was ever recovered. Teams combed through caves, ravines, and dense forest corridors for 15 days. The footprint trail ended abruptly at a rocky outcropping where no further impressions could be preserved. Thermal imaging failed to detect any remaining heat signatures, and the cadaver dogs lost all scent beyond the initial sight. The physical evidence from the case, especially the plaster footprint casts, continued to draw scientific interest. The findings quietly circulated among researchers as potential proof that an undocumented species could exist in the region. 6 months after the disappearance, the Kellerman family held a memorial service without a body. Legal death was declared based on the evidence and the exhaustive search documentation. Jennifer continued to wrestle with regret over her ex-husband's state of mind before the trip, convinced that intervention might have prevented his death. Thanks for watching. Want to watch more Bigfoot found footage? Click here for more.